Lesson 4 is our lesson on incident management, and it has 4 main objectives. First, we'll learn the high-level objectives and scope of this important process. Next, we'll spend some time learning the incident management-related terminology, and there's a good amount in here. Next, we'll walk through the incident management process, and we'll wrap up with a list of the roles who take part in incident management. The primary goal of incident management is to restore normal service operation ASAP and to minimize the adverse impact on business operations, thus ensuring that the best possible levels of service quality and availability are maintained. Normal, of course, is defined as the service operating within the parameters as listed in your SLA, which means that nobody can complain if they can't access the payroll system at 4 in the morning if the SLA doesn't say it should be available at 4 in the morning. Let's pretend that it's 2 in the afternoon and Sally in marketing is trying to print an important document, but nothing's coming out of the printer. Sally calls the service desk, and the service desk tries to help her out. They pull up the SLA that pertains to her, and they see that the SLA says that she needs to be able to print from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. each day, and that's it. So they ask her, "Sally, what printer are you trying to print to?" And she says, "Printer A. It's pretty close to my desk and it's my favorite printer." The service desk tries a few tricks to get her print job to come out of printer A, and when it doesn't, they reroute her print job to printer B instead, which is down the long hallway. They ask Sally if her print job came out okay on printer B, and after she checks and she says yes, the service desk says, "Great, your incident is now closed," and they hang up the phone. And Sally's incident right now is resolved and closed. Does that sound strange to you? Well, let's look at the goal of incident management again. It's to restore normal service operation as quickly as possible. So the goal of incident management is to restore the service of printing ASAP, not the printer. So as long as we're complying with the SLA that says that Sally just needs to be able to print someplace, then we're golden. So if the service desk is able to get Sally to print, period, then the incident is resolved. Now let's use an ugly, over-the-top example just to really illustrate this point. What if Sally works on the 1st floor and printer B is on the 37th floor and the elevator is broken? If we want to be really strict here, the service desk should be able to say, "Put your sneakers on and feel the burn, Sally," because as long as printer B is spitting out her print jobs, we're covered. What happens if 14 people call the service desk and report that they can't print to printer A? The service desk will open up 14 individual incidents and will reroute those 14 people individually to printer B, and then the service desk will close all 14 incidents since the service desk was able to restore the service of printing to all 14 people. You might be thinking, well, why don't we just fix printer A? Incident management's job is to restore the service of printing. So as long as that user can print to printer B, we're fine. But what about printer A? That's the job of problem management, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I'll give you a teaser. A problem is the unknown root cause of one or more incidents. So incident management's job is just to restore the service as quickly as possible, and a lot of times you're just going to fix an incident with a workaround. Problem management's job is to get to the root cause and figure out why printer A isn't working and then to fix printer A. But we'll talk about problem management in 2 lessons, so sit tight. Now let's try a different scenario. Let's pretend that Matt from Human Resources calls in and now he can't print. So the service desk looks up the SLA that pertains to Matt and they see that Matt has to be able to print to the HR specific printer from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The SLA was written this way because the people in HR print confidential documents that can't just be printed to any old public printer. The service desk wants to reroute Matt's print jobs to a second printer, but there is no second printer in the secret locked room of HR. So this incident can't be resolved or closed because we aren't able to restore the service of printing for Matt. So this one stays open until we're able to come up with a workaround or until the printer itself is fixed. So again, remember that the goal of incident management is to restore the service as stated in the SLA, not necessarily the device. The process of incident management covers any event which disrupts or which could disrupt a service. Now we'll clarify this a little bit on the next slide because this sentence is admittedly a little gray. Incidents are reported to the service desk, or through some automated tool that's owned by the service desk, by users, and also by IT staff, meaning maybe some network administrator notices something strange over the course of his or her workday and they report it to the service desk. Also, event monitoring tools can discover broken things in the environment. So incident management is not necessarily 100% user-driven. Incident management has lots of new vocabulary to learn, so let's take a look. First, we have the word incident. An incident is an unplanned interruption to an IT service, which means something is broken, or a reduction in the quality of that service, which means something's slow, for example. If you fire up your web browser and try to get to Google and the page takes 30 seconds for the name to resolve and the page to load, chances are that's considered slow, assuming that you're not using a dial-up connection. We would consider that slowness an incident. Now the next part of this definition says, failure of a CI that has not yet impacted service is also an incident. Well, let's say that you have two hard drives in a server and they're mirrored. If one of the hard drives dies, your end users don't feel the pain at all because the other drive is working just fine and picking up the slack. But we as IT know that that second hard drive is dead. So even though users aren't feeling the pain, it's still an incident because something is broken. The next word we have is the word timescales. When IT people ask each other in the hallway, hey, what's the SLA on this ticket? What they really mean is, how long do we have before the time runs out on this ticket? And timescales is the time frame documented in the SLA. You'll probably have shorter timescales for higher priority incidents and longer timescales for lower priority incidents. And speaking of priority, we'll talk about setting priority on the next slide. The next word is models, and this is a word that we're going to see a lot from here on out. The good news is that it's easy to remember. A model is just a predefined way of doing something. You'll see that predefined is in italics, and that's the word they always pair with the word model on the exam. So an incident model is a predefined way of handling a certain flavor incident. For example, maybe your antivirus application has a memory leak, and the only way to resolve the incident is to reboot your machine. Instead of troubleshooting this repetitive incident from scratch every time, we just know to reboot the PC. The next term we have is major incidents. A major incident is exactly what it sounds like. It's a big, bad incident that usually affects a critical service and also affects a lot of people, or could even cause damage to your company's public image. But what counts as a major incident for one company might be small potatoes for somebody else, so you need to hack that out on your own. For example, if you're a pizza shop and you have a typo on your website, it's probably not the end of the world. But if you're ING Direct, which is an internet-only bank, it's a showstopper because people might not see the bank as trustworthy if they can't spell the word savings right. The thing to remember about major incidents is that they usually affect a large number of people and they'll have their own separate procedures for handling them as well as shorter timescales. That's in italics, so you'll need to remember it. The last term on this slide is the term service request. A service request is the opposite of an incident. An incident means that something is broken. A service request means that nothing is broken, but a user just kind of needs something from IT. If a user calls the service desk and asks if they can get a BlackBerry issued, or if they can't find the PO form and could they have a copy, or they can't remember if we're open on President's Day, that's a service request. We'll talk more about service requests when we get to our next process called request fulfillment. When an incident gets reported, it's up to the service desk to prioritize it. Prioritizing means that we're going to figure out which incident out of this big stack of incidents we're going to deal with first. Some companies have the philosophy of those who whine the loudest get the highest priority, coupled with those with the nicest corner office furniture get the highest priority. This isn't very democratic, so we have a formula instead. The formula for calculating priority is seen on the bottom of this slide. It's urgency times impact. Impact means how much does it hurt the business? Picture someone getting punched. That's an impact and it hurts. And urgency means how quickly do you need it restored? Or as they say in the UK, the extent to which the resolution can bear delay. If you put these two numbers together, you can figure out which incident needs to be dealt with first, or which one receives the highest priority. Off of this slide, you'll need to remember that priority equals urgency times impact. Since all incidents start at the service desk, it's natural that the service desk would get the first crack at them. If the service desk can't resolve an incident on their own, then they escalate it one of two ways: functionally or hierarchically. Functional escalation means that the service desk escalates it across the org chart to someone who has more knowledge in that particular area. A desktop person, a network person, a server person, etc. Hierarchical escalation is when the service desk escalates to someone with more authority, like a supervisor or a manager. If there's a major incident going on, the service desk probably doesn't have the authority to say, "Everybody stop what you're doing and focus on this," but an IT manager certainly can. You'll need to know these two terms, functional escalation and hierarchical escalation, for the exam. This slide here is going to show a high-level overview of the incident management process, so let's walk through it. First, an incident is identified or discovered, either by an end user, someone in IT, or by some automated monitoring system. Once it's been identified, it gets logged in our ticket tracking system. There's no official ITIL-titled ticket tracking system or incident management database, so we'll just say generically that incidents get logged in the CMS. Once the incident has been logged in the CMS, we assign a category. Is this a hardware thing? Is this a software thing? Is this a security thing? Or maybe after we've done some digging, we can see that there's nothing really broken at all, and this is simply a service request. If that's the case, we can farm it off to the request fulfillment process because we don't want to bog down the incident management process with little stuff like that. The next lesson in this chapter will talk about the request fulfillment process. Now the service desk sets the priority of the incident using our priority equals urgency times impact formula. If we discover that this is a major incident, then we'll follow our own internal procedure for handling this type of thing. Don't forget that major incidents have their own separate procedures and shorter time scales. Assuming this is not a major incident, the service desk will take a crack at this incident and will give it an initial diagnosis. If this incident falls outside the scope or skill set of the service desk, then the service desk will escalate it to someone else. If it's something the service desk can handle, then the service desk will hold on to this ticket. Whomever the ticket is assigned to will do some additional investigation and diagnosis and will ultimately come up with a resolution. Don't forget that incident management isn't trying to fix the root cause. We're just trying to restore the service and get the user back up and running, even if it's just with a workaround. Once the technical work has been done and the user is back up and running, then the ticket gets closed. Now, what's the difference between resolution and closure? Incident resolution means that whatever technical magic needed to be done to get the user back up and running has been done, and any technical person can resolve an incident. But incident closure means following up with the end user or closing the loop and making sure that the user is satisfied. But since only the service desk is allowed to interface with end users, only the service desk is allowed to close incidents. So if we pretend that someone called the service desk saying they lost network connectivity, the service desk takes the call and does all of these steps up to here. And then they escalate the incident to the network team, who then resets the user's port. The network team marks the ticket as resolved, which then kicks the ticket back to the service desk, so the service desk can confirm with the user that the user is now able to work. When the service desk closes an incident, they need to first check with the end user to make sure that they're happy, and then they also need to double check that the incident is in the proper category in the ticket tracking system. For example, sometimes when an incident comes in, it looks like it's an operating system issue, but then it turns out to be a bad sector on the hard drive. When the ticket was first opened, the service desk put the ticket into some operating system-like category. But by the time the incident has been investigated, we learned that it was really a bad hard drive, so now the category needs to be updated to say hardware. This way, when we run our reports each month, our numbers will be more accurate. Also, the service desk should think, is this incident part of a trend here? Is anybody else experiencing this? And if so, the service desk should give the problem manager a call to have the problem manager open a problem ticket. We'll talk more about problem management in a bit, but for now, just remember that the service desk does not open the problem ticket themselves. They ask the problem manager to do it. For the exam, please try to remember the basic flow of this diagram, and the good news is that it's pretty intuitive. And you'll also need to remember the stuff that's in this box here on the right. Incident management is very service desk centric. The service desk serves as the first line of support, and they are the only team that interfaces with end users. Some organizations have a second line support team on the service desk, and this is entirely up to you. Third line support consists of folks in our other functions: technical management, IT operations management, applications management, or even third-party suppliers if they're the ones who are going to work on the incident. You'll also have an incident management process owner who does all the DEMI stuff that all process owners do. It might be helpful to have your service desk supervisor perform this role or wear this hat, but you don't have to. Please make a giant note of the fact that the word may is in italics and underlined and bolded, because they may try to trick you on the exam by asking, true or false, the service desk manager is always the incident management process owner. The answer is false, because the name of the process owner of the incident management process is the incident manager. See the distinction? The service desk is accountable for the timely resolution of all incidents, even those incidents that are being handled by other technical groups. This means that your service desk has to have the authority to poke your second and third level techs and say, hey, what's the status on this? What's taking so long? And this means that your second and third level support people need to respect your service desk personnel. This roll slide wraps up our lesson on incident management. Let's move on to lesson 5, which is a very short lesson on the request fulfillment process.